Okay, chess fans, how many hours of work are you going to have to put into your chess game to get to 1800 chess.com rapid, which will put you in about the top 1% of all online players? Okay, so to do this, we're going to look at how many hours I personally spent getting to 1800 chess.com rapid, which I achieved earlier this year. Started playing a game in late 2020. And so obviously everyone learns at a different pace. However, the breakdown and the hours I spent on doing specific things will give you an interesting insight into the road ahead for you if you are a lower rated player. Okay, so let's break this down into three major areas: the amount of hours spent on doing things like tactics training, solving puzzles, the amount of hours spent playing games with analysis, obviously analyzing our games is very important, and then doing other stuff like Chessable, reading books, and keeping up to date with the latest things Vladimir Kramnik is saying, because obviously that will definitely help improve your game. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of people out there that don't bother with any tactics training. They don't see the point of it. They're like, well, what's the point? I know mate in 1, mate in 2, etc., etc. And so that's an entire another subject. We can devote a lot of time to that in other videos. But the main thing that tactics training did for me is get me away from materialism. Okay, so the first thing that we learn in chess is, okay, queens are 9 pawns and rooks are 5 pawns, bishops are 3, etc., etc. However, once we get to a certain level, we have to start unlearning these things and looking at things like giving up material to gain initiative to get an attack going. And so there are many benefits to doing things like tactics training. Chess, after all, is a game of pattern recognition to a certain extent. But here's an example of a puzzle that I got wrong, okay? So white has put its rook here on g7. I don't know what happened in this game. Maybe it took a pawn here. But white clearly understands that black cannot take. But this is exactly what black does. And so this is a puzzle that I got wrong. So I'm going to give you 3 seconds to pause the video and work out the correct continuation. Now white is just completely winning here, okay? And so I'll give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Pause the video. Well done if you worked it out. The answer to this puzzle is not to look at things like knight h5 check, or taking this knight, or delivering this check. It's quite simply to play rook to g1. That's it. It's so easy when the answer is given to you. And after knight takes g1, we have here queen g5 check, king f8, only legal move, and of course queen h6 is checkmate. If after rook g1, black decides not to take the rook, then we just have king f8, the only legal move, and queen h6 checkmate. Okay, easy when the answer is given to you, but that's my point. When you are too focused on the value of a material, you easily overlook moves like rook g1 because you think, oh, they'll just take my rook. But in this particular case, you can sacrifice a whole bunch of material just to simply checkmate your opponent. Okay, so let me give you an example of how this comes to fruition in your games. I have the black pieces here. This is one of the games that took me to 1800 chess.com rapid. And in this position, I'm completely winning, but it's an open board. It's not trivial. Queens are on it, and you're trying to figure out a clean way to win here without too much counterplay. And here I play this simple looking move, rook to d3, and it carries a threat. It carries a threat of taking this pawn here on g3. That's it. That's the only reason I lifted my rook. It's not the top engine move, but it's a kind of consequence of doing lots and lots of tactics training. It carries a threat. And so obviously after something like rook takes g3, they cannot take because we're going to have a simple mate in 3 sequence. Instead, my opponent ignores this, plays bishop takes e6, perhaps hoping that I play f takes e6 and they deliver a whole bunch of checks. We proceed with our plan. We have here rook takes g3. My opponent realizes they cannot take, and so we have here king h2, and a few moves later we have checkmate anyway. Okay, but that just gives you an example of what tactics training does. It helps you to see moves that you otherwise wouldn't see. Okay, so let's have a look at how many hours was devoted to tactics training since the beginning of my journey. So let's break this down into how many puzzles were solved, how much time was spent doing Puzzle Rush, Puzzle Storm. So if you're on chess.com, there is this feature where you try to solve as many puzzles as you can in a 3-minute window. That's known as Puzzle Rush. On Lichess, it's called Puzzle Storm. And then they also have features called Puzzle Rush Survival on chess.com and Puzzle Streak on Lichess, where you try to solve increasingly harder puzzles. You have unlimited time, and then in the case of chess.com, 3 strikes and you're out. Lichess, 1 strike and you're out. And so It's telling me here, well, I put these numbers down at the time of reaching 1800 earlier this year, that on chess.com I had done 2000 or attempted 2417 puzzles, lead chess 494, total attempts is 2911, and if we say we spend about 5 minutes per puzzle, what that works out to is about 243 hours on puzzle training. Okay, and so what about Rush and Storm? Okay, so on chess.com we had about 300 attempts, leadchess.org we had 603 attempts. Altogether that's 903, 3 minutes per run, and this comes out to about 45 hours of puzzle Rush / Storm training. If we have a look at survival streak, which is what I predominantly focus on, I think it's important to keep repeating easier puzzles. Give yourself sufficient time though to try and get to harder and harder ones. On chess.com we have here 357 attempts, lead chess 275 attempts, altogether 632, and spending about half an hour per run, and it's saying that it's come to about 316 hours. And so altogether, if you add up all these numbers, you get about 604 hours devoted to tactics training, which should immediately strike you as quite a lot. I mean, there'll be people out there that don't do much tactics training at all. Okay, so what about actual game time? Let's split this up into playing Blitz, Rapid, Classical over-the-board chess, and daily correspondence games on chess.com. I've excluded Bullet. I see no value in that. However, I am going to include Blitz. Something a strong player once said to me was, there is no calculation without intuition. You can sit a beginner in front of a chessboard, a chess position for a long time. Chances are they're not going to come up with any good candidate moves. I think what Blitz is doing is helping you to develop familiarity with the game, helping you to develop your intuition. Okay, your execution is wrong in the beginning, but it improves with time. And so we've got here the breakdown for chess.com and lead chess, but all in all played approximately 5,000 Blitz games at the time of reaching 1800 chess.com rapid, spending about 7.5 minutes per game. I do like to analyze my games. Obviously, some games are short, some games last longer. Having about 1 or 2 minutes baked in for actual analysis time, seeing what tactics I missed, and it comes here to about 665 hours. For rapid chess, if we have a look at the breakdown here, the total is 1,175 games at the time of reaching this milestone, spending about half an hour per game, playing mostly 10-minute rapid now, and baking in here about 5 to 10 minutes of analysis, again looking at moves that I missed, and it's coming here to about 587 hours. Classical chess, 32 games. These last a very long time, typically 1 or 2 hours. I do like to spend half an hour to an hour actually analyzing these things. So spending about 2.5 hours per game. It comes here to about 80 hours. Daily chess, 834 games, about 20 minutes per game, only spending about 1 or 2 minutes per move. And this comes to 284 hours. So if you add this whole thing together, you get 1,617 hours. Now you might say, well, the 80 hours that you spent on playing over the board classical chess is far more important than the 665 hours you spent on Blitz. This isn't entirely clear to me, and I have no kind of settled opinion on this. I'm not an elite player, so I'm open to the idea that I could be wrong. But it feels to me like all of these things have some value. Okay, so what about other stuff here? I've got Chessable, got books, and I got reviewing Grandmaster games. And so what's interesting about all this stuff is that although we think about it a lot, I actually don't spend a lot of time on it. And so we've got here 1B3 course by Grandmaster Adiban Baskran. I own that. I also own 1B6 Against Everything by International Master Lawrence Trent. But all in all, 25 hours is not much. Now, there's a whole bunch of people out there that say don't spend too much time on openings. I don't think I do. However, I think that if we're in it for the long term, you might as well get going with openings. It's going to become more and more relevant as you progress up the rating ladder. You have here books. I haven't really read any chess books. I have, however, devoured Simple Chess by Grandmaster Michael Steen. Spent about 10 hours on it. Gave me some good insights into the game. 100 endgames you must know. Not been through all of it, but some of the key stuff to me. But all in all, 15 hours on books is nothing. Reviewing Grandmaster games is more significant. I think I've been through about 200 Grandmaster games, looking through their specific moves and why they made them using an engine. And this comes to about 100 hours. All in all, this comes to about 140 hours. But compared to some of the previous numbers I gave you, it's not a lot. Now, of course, you can argue that doing this stuff is more valuable than, playing your 11th rapid game of the day. I don't know, but it is interesting that the number is quite small. So if we have a look at the summary now, and you put this all together, you have tactics training, games, and other stuff. 600 odd hours for tactics training, 1,600 hours for games, and then 140 for other stuff. All in all, this comes to 2,361 hours to get to 1,800 chess.com rapid, which to me sounds about right. Okay, that is a lot of hours that should take you beyond beginner land, but at the same time, there's no real justification here to be jousting with FMs and IMs who are 2,200, 2,300, 2,400 on the platform. If you take a book like Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers, which has a controversial central argument that it takes 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to become a master, you can see that although my hours spent is significant, it's nowhere near that. And there's no reason for me to think that, I should be a 22, 2,300 player on the platform. I just simply haven't put in the time into the game. Okay, so there are all kinds of takeaways from this, but the two things that really stick out for me is that I spend about 25% of my time on tactics training. And so if you're rated lower than me and you're stuck at a plateau, it might be just a case of putting your hand on your heart and saying, do you spend enough time solving puzzles? And of course, as I alluded to before, Blitz has kind of been useful. What's interesting is that I've played approximately 1,000 rapid games at the time of reaching 1,800, which is not a lot. But I did spend a lot of time playing Blitz. As I said before, there is no calculation without intuition. Blitz helps you develop that familiarity with chess. That's it. See you later.